you ready to start, Senator?
I'm ready.
Okay. There's a lot of things that we could talk about, but let's concentrate on the wildfires that are currently ravaging Oregon. That's what I'd like to talk with you about today. Now, I know that yesterday you and Senator Merkley put forth a request for extra federal funds to help battle these fires. And among the supporters of that plan is Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris. So what's the likelihood the House and Senate will actually agree to provide any of this extra money, and either in an upcoming spending package or as a standalone relief supplemental?
I'm very hopeful that we will be able to get the help passed quickly. There are two factors involved. One, other parts of the country have had disasters as well. And second, what is different about these fires is that these fires are getting closer and closer to major population areas. And if you look over the West, Oregon, Washington, and California, for example, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of forest fire evacuees, folks that desperately need help. So what we're trying to do is, you talked about the letter that I led that had more than 40 members calling for additional help. We need help with shelter. We need help with a whole host of really emergency services. Then I have also, as the ranking Democrat on the Finance Committee, introduced help that could be secured through the tax code. We need folks, for example, who could get immediate cash relief for their businesses and to pay for necessities. Now, one issue to watch is you've already seen a debate about how much of this is about climate science and about forestry management. And what I have tried to do is bring both sides together around this issue by saying, look, good climate science is good forestry science, because until we bring both sides together, it's harder to go out and round up the votes for this assistance. But I'm pulling out all the stops. And yesterday, the big package that I introduced in terms of disaster relief gives us a chance to make common cause with folks in the Midwest and in the South. Senator Kamala Harris, of course, is a co-sponsor of my legislation, and I'm very hopeful that we'll be able to get support for these bills and see them signed, as much of them as possible, into law right away.
Now, also yesterday, you were one of the sponsors of the National Prescribed Fire Act of 2020, and that calls for some controlled burns in the pre-fire season. And as I understand, it gives some extra flexibility to the states too. So could you explain a little bit about that and what you think its chances of becoming law are?
I am the lead sponsor of the bill outlining what are essentially prescribed burns. And I'm also hopeful that we'll be able to get Republican support for this proposition, because there is interest in other parts of the country. If you were to sum it up in a sentence, what the best scientists in the field say is, if you spend a little bit now, essentially as you go into colder weather, the off season, you spend a little bit now, you can save yourself a whole lot more tragedy when you have catastrophic fires, when you get particularly to the hotter months. So that's what this is all about. And with those prescribed burns, for example, you can get in there and clean out some of that vegetation that can otherwise really grow. In our part of the world, of course, it gets hot and dry. You have a lightning strike, and then all of a sudden you have an inferno on your hands. The other area that we need to do more on is fire prevention. And the Congress has passed my bill to end what's called fire borrowing. Too often, in effect, the bureaucracy would borrow from the Fire Prevention Fund to put the fire out, and then you'd have bigger problems. Senator Mike Crapo, with the support, he and I, of 350 groups, environmental groups, industry groups, we were able to get the law changed so you'd fight the big fires from the disaster fund without harming prevention. We need to expand that law.
I believe it was in August that you and Cory Booker put forth the 21st Century Conservation Corps, similar in scope to the one that FDR had, the Civilian Conservation Corps. Focuses on job training and development for rural economies. So what's the status of that bill? Has that moved forward at all?
We have, in the last couple of days, had a lot of interest from senators, House members on this. Basically, this is an opportunity when we got a lot of folks out of work. Unemployment rate 11%, I believe people saw today in our state, and certainly in many communities in Oregon. This is a chance to put thousands of young people to work doing the restoration work that is so important, and also to go in there and clean out these millions of acres of hazardous fuels that have backed up. And those hazardous fuels also are a real magnet for very large fires.
I know that last weekend you took a tour of some of the fire ravaged areas in Oregon, and for those people who haven't had a chance to do that, could you share like a firsthand account of the things that you saw as you drove around?
Well, first, what is so striking is I was going into communities where I would have had town hall meetings and other kinds of sessions, listening to Oregonians. You can just look you in the eye and share their views. I've had like 970 of those town hall meetings, and those communities had been reduced to piles of ash. And you had cars that were completely melted away. And so you picture, if you would, how hot it's going to be for a car, the entire car, to just completely melt away. And one of the reasons why I think we'll have more support, and I think I touched on it earlier, is what is different now is that the fires are getting closer and closer to major population areas. And we've learned so much. You asked about the Civilian Conservation Corps. One of the priorities for me for a Civilian Conservation Corps would be to have those young people work in communities where you have residences very close to the woods, and you really ought to go in and take steps to better protect them, what's called hardening.
Well, Senator, I know it's been a busy time for you and for everybody. I hope you stay safe, and thank you for giving us a few minutes of your time. Best of everything to you. We'll talk again soon.
I'll look forward to it. Thanks for your interest.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Bye, guys. And I'll send you the video link soon, Tim.
All right. Thanks a lot, Hank. See you.
I also got some photos. I'll send them your way if you want them.